Hello, seventh grade. Happy Friday. Virtual lecture today, as I mentioned on Wednesday, because I am not here. I am at the college. And then you guys are also going to have another virtual lecture on Monday, right? Because your usual lecture days are Monday, Wednesday. I have an event that I have to attend at the college on Monday, so I will not um, be there for that. But if you guys have any questions just about this lecture, email me or you can ask me on Tuesday when I come back in. Today we're doing the second lecture of our Islam unit, and this one is Intro to Muhammad, right? Muhammad, the most important person throughout this unit, right? When we did Rome, there were several important people. We learned about Hannibal, Scipio, Romulus, Caesar, Augustus, Constantine, all of these famous people. Muhammad is really kind of the person that you need to know for this unit, and we're going to be working with him, not just today, but we'll do some supplementary assignments on him as well. So, Muhammad was born around 570 AD, and it's around because historians don't exactly know when he was born. It gets tricky to kind of date those types of things. If you guys remember 476, I think it was 476, maybe 467, somewhere around there, this is traditionally marked as the fall of the Roman Empire because that's when the Western Empire fell. So Muhammad, roughly 100 years he was born after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. So there's a power vacuum that developed in the Mediterranean world because there was no Rome to tell everyone what to do anymore. And Muhammad, let's just get into him. He was born in 570 AD. He belonged to a powerful tribe in the Arabian Peninsula. We talked on Wednesday how there are these different tribal groups competing for control over Arabia. And Muhammad was born in Mecca to one of these very powerful tribal families, if not like the most powerful one. And he had a pretty good upbringing, right? He was a orphan for some of his early life, but he was still with the tribe, so he was doing okay. And he worked as a merchant, he didn't become Muhammad yet. He was kind of just a regular dude in the Arabian Peninsula, living in Mecca, and, didn't become Muhammad yet. That would all change when he was about 40 years old, right? And what happened when he was about 40 is that was when he had first of several really religious experiences throughout his life. And the way that this first one happened is Muhammad would often go kind of off in the mountains to pray. And one of these times when he was about 40, he was praying, and he reportedly began to receive messages from God through the angel Gabriel, right? This was the first of several religious experiences that he had, and what this voice, what this angel Gabriel was telling him, was that reject polytheism, believe in one true God, and that God is the one true God. And that it's the God of Abraham, which we mentioned. We actually haven't mentioned it. Abraham was an important prophet several thousand years ago, and Abraham is kind of the base prophet for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So the angel Gabriel is telling him, believe in the God of Abraham, but Jews and Christians are doing it wrong. You're going to do it correctly. And after kind of these several religious experiences, Muhammad, that is, compiles them. There's a couple different ways you could spell it. Muhammad compiles them into this book called the Quran, right? And essentially what this is this is the holy book of Islam. This is the equivalent of the Bible to Christians. It's the holy book. It's considered divinely inspired, and it's based off of the information that Muhammad was reportedly receiving when he was praying in the mountains from the angel Gabriel. And Muhammad began to teach. when Muhammad was teaching, he was teaching the lessons that he was receiving. He was teaching the lessons that he was receiving from this angel. And a lot of these lessons included, the most important one by far was belief in one God, which, we talked about monotheism or polytheism is the belief in multiple gods. Monotheism is just the opposite of that. It's the belief in one God. Mono coming from the Greek word for one, theism coming from the Greek word to worship. So worshiping one. And he also urged a lot of people to kind of live moral and just lives, right? And what does this mean? This means live the way that God wants you to, right? That's the way that the angel was telling him that God wanted people to live. Don't live in a way that would go against that. The God, the name that, the name for God in Islam is Allah, which is spelled like that, A-L-L-A-H. And an important note, I don't think this mentions this somewhere in the book or in the slides, but an important distinction, Islam is the religion. This is the equivalent, like Christianity is religion. Islam is a religion. Muslims are people who believe in Islam, right? Religion, followers. Just, don't mix up those two terms. And also in Muhammad's teachings, he emphasized, kindness, charity, respect for others, pretty good things that were needed in the Arabian Peninsula at the time due to the constant warfare that they were experiencing. However, the problem with this is that the tribe that Muhammad belonged to disagreed with these new teachings that he was promoting. So they thought that Muhammad was a, threat to their way of life and gonna shake up the establishment in Mecca. And the thing is that he was, right? So when we look about this, you say, there's the Mecca establishment on one side, and then there's Muhammad on the other side. The Mecca establishment was afraid that Muhammad was going to change their way of life, but that was kind of a valid fear because Muhammad, with his new religion, was trying to challenge that way of life. Just in his perspective, it was justified, right? And kind of the main reason why this was a problem is that the establishment in Mecca liked being wealthy and powerful. And what Muhammad was teaching is he encouraged people to live in poverty, right? He encouraged people not to care about their wealth or status. And he encouraged religious tolerance for mostly Jews and Christians. This made Muhammad popular. In the Roman Empire, we learned about how Jesus and Christianity was popular among the kind of lesser people in Roman society, the slaves, the non-citizens, the poor people, because Christianity said that they were all equal, right? Kind of the same thing was happening with Islam. The people that were attracted to this initially in the Arabian Peninsula were not the establishment. They were kind of the lesser people of society. People who were poorer in poverty were the people who were initially attracted to this new religion. Despite that happening, Muslims continued to face persecution. Right? And this is similar to what was happening to Christians in the Roman Empire. They were targeted on their beliefs, and they were kind of oftentimes punished or jailed simply due to their beliefs. So what the Mecca establishment, they made Muhammad a deal. They said, go to this other city. You can be kind of in charge of this other city. And that city was called Medina. Spelled like that. They said, go be in charge of Medina. Bring your Muslims to Medina. Just don't really deal with... don't threaten Mecca, which is the problem that they were facing. Somewhat kind of on a bad move for the Mecca establishment is they gave Muhammad, who was known for being a skilled speaker, known to be able to rally people, a military genius, a political leader. They gave him a following and control of a city, and they said, just stay there. And naturally, Muhammad did not stay there, and he started building a community and uniting tribes around Medina under Islam, right? And a lot of these practices were when Islam started to really take off. Expanding outside Medina, Muhammad recruits them. At this time, it was mostly peaceful integration. There were not a ton of wars yet. Muhammad was a military leader, but that was a little bit later on. And he builds this community based on Islamic teachings, and Medina continues to grow stronger and stronger under his leadership. Taking a pause right there, we're going to take a break from Islam expanding, and we're going to learn about a little bit more about what Islam is, right? The most important thing of Islam they're known as the 5 pillars. And these are acts of faith and worship and kind of commitment to Islam that they all have to observe and, participate in. And you should have these memorized because they're important. The first one, belief in one God. We can call that monotheism. Belief in one God and monotheism are the same thing. Number 2 is prayer. Muslims pray 5 times a day. Required under the kind of rules of the religion. Next one is fasting during Ramadan, and that is a Muslim event where they fast. You can't eat during the day. You basically have a meal before the sun comes up and then after the sun goes down. So you can't eat during the day. From my understanding, you're not even really supposed to drink water either. But some professional athletes today who are Muslim, if you're a basketball player, you're allowed to drink water during your games because that's a medical liability. Fourth one is charity. Islam is pretty big and clear on giving to those in need. Charity. And then the last one is the pilgrimage to Mecca. And we'll learn about that once we learn about how Mecca became Islamic. And all of these 5 pillars, memorize them. They're the most important thing to Islam because this is what makes someone Muslim. Talk about the prayer real quick. I mentioned it was during 5 times a day. You're supposed to face Mecca, which is the holiest city in Islam. So literally if I'm right here, I have to find which direction I would be facing Mecca and then pray in that direction. 5 times a day. And in the past there was regulations that American public schools wouldn't let students do that, but now you can be excused from class if you need to pray, if you're a Muslim student. Fasting during Ramadan teaches self-discipline, and then charity, compassion for the poor. That one's pretty self-explanatory, giving to those in need. The last pillar, the pilgrimage, is kind of not so much the hardest to understand, but kind of the biggest gesture that Muslims are required to do. And all the pilgrimages is you have to go to Mecca once during your life, at least once. Many do several times, but you should try to make it at least once. And what this does is it's this city, and it symbolizes that all Muslims go to this place. It's an act of unity, it's an act of faith, it brings connection to each other, and they all go to kind of where their faith started, no matter where they are in the world. So even if you're a Muslim in Northern California, you should try to make it to Mecca at least once in your life. And then the 5 pillars just, celebrate important events in Islamic history. So, pausing that, let's go back to Muhammad and the boys. Muhammad returns to Mecca in 630 AD, and this time they conquered it. Right? Muhammad was a general, among other things. He was all-around talented guy, good at most things. But so they returned to Mecca, and they conquer it. And many people in Mecca accepted Islam peacefully. Some did not. But Muhammad continued teaching in Mecca until he died just a few years later in 632 AD. So, when you look at the life of Muhammad, it kind of follows this arc, right? Can you guys see that? So, you have Muhammad is born right here, and then he is an orphan in the powerful tribe, and then he has these religious experiences, goes to Medina, and kind of founds Islam when he's there. And then right at the very end of the life, he conquers Mecca. And Mecca to this day is the most important city in the Islamic faith, no matter where you are in the world. Let's see, slide 11 talks about his life and teachings became foundation for Islam as a religion and a way of life, kind of what we talked about. A lot of Islam is kind of... Islam and Christianity are different, but they're similar to each other. Christians believe that Jesus, learned about last unit, was God on earth, but Muslims just believe that he was a prophet. Still important, but still a messenger of God, but he was not God. That's a pretty important distinction to make. And then before that, Muslims and Christians often reference the same prophets as each other. And Muhammad is kind of where it deviates. You have this term, seal of the prophets, and what that refers to is that Muslims believe that Muhammad was the last prophet, the final messenger, after all the prophets that came before. So there hasn't been a messenger of God or a prophet really since Muhammad. And Muhammad's life is critically important because it shows how kind of Muslims should act, right? Muhammad, I guess you could call him the first Muslim, but he kind of founded the religion. His life, kind of a lead by example. Many Muslims today kind of live their life in accordance to almost what Muhammad would do or the way he did it, because he set a lot of the important practices in place for them. A few more slides left. Talking more about the Quran, that's just the holy book in Islam. The most important text, one of the most important books in the world just because of how popular Islam has become, but, contains teaching, law, morality, spirituality, helps Muslims live their life in accordance to the Quran. And the Quran is, meant to be easily memorized. Not easily memorized, but a lot of Muslims memorize large portions of the Quran. And I believe that there are some people who have the entire thing memorized, which is, I think I have a pretty good memory, but that is just so beyond me, memorizing the entire text. Kind of wrapping things up here, slide 13. The overarching lesson of this topic is that Muhammad lives his life and founds Islam. Even after Muhammad is gone, Islam's just getting started. It's just in its early days still, and it's going to have tremendous influence on the rest of the world, and it's going to rapidly take over the Arabian Peninsula, many other regions of the world that we'll learn about. And then even as we conclude this unit in the past, there are still areas today that are Muslim in areas of the world that aren't even close to the Arabian Peninsula. There are Muslims all over the world. And, Muhammad with his ways set the stage for the rapid expansion of the Islamic world, which on Monday, your second virtual lecture will go over the spread of Islam and how it spread far and wide past the Arabian Peninsula. Looks like we're wrapping this lecture up in about 20 minutes. Let's just go over the vocab terms real quick. What do I have down? Looks like you guys, Muhammad is a vocab term, but you should definitely know who he is if you're paying attention whatsoever during this lecture. Know what the Quran is, for sure. Know the 5 pillars. And then the last one is, I believe, seal of the prophets. So know what these are. They're critical to understand the rest of the unit. And, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I test on the quizzes and stuff, the vocabulary spotlight more than anything else. So definitely know those terms at the very minimum. You guys have some review/discussion questions to do. I recommend doing them in groups like how you usually do them, even though I'm not there. But just make sure that they get done. Make sure you understand everything from this lesson. Thanks for hanging in with me. And I will see you guys on Tuesday. If you have any questions about this lecture, feel free to send me an email or catch me before or after class on Tuesday. So have a good rest of your Friday.